Hello, and welcome to Knockboom Creek. Here we discuss all things paranormal, extraterrestrial, and cryptid. Today I'll tell you a story. If you liked our video on mimics, well then you're in for a treat. Deep within the heart of America lies a place of untouched beauty, but beneath its picturesque facade, a darkness lingers. Long ago, a powerful shaman, revered and feared in equal measure, walked these woods. Driven by a desire to protect his people and their sacred land, the shaman wove a powerful magic, a curse, binding malevolent spirits to the forest, forever tethered to the woods. No mimic could leave the forest unless taken willingly by a human. They would become masters of disguise, assuming the forms of unsuspecting humans. Years turned into decades, decades into centuries. The national park flourished, attracting visitors from far and wide. Unbeknownst to them, the mimics watched, waited. They observed the human visitors, studying their mannerisms, learning to mimic their appearance, their voices. They would wait for the opportune moment, the perfect target. A lone hiker separated from their group, a child wandering too far from their campsite. And when the time was right, they would strike. The park's beauty would become a hunting ground. The sun was beginning its descent as the Thompson family arrived at their designated campsite. Michael maneuvered their minivan expertly into the clearing. His wife, Sarah, turned to smile at their two children in the back. 10-year-old Emily, her nose perpetually stuck in a book, barely looked up. 8-year-old Ethan vibrated with excitement, eager to explore the great outdoors. The following day dawned bright and clear. The Thompson family set out to explore the network of trails that crisscrossed the park. Ethan, a whirlwind of youthful exuberance, darted ahead, his laughter echoing through the trees. Ethan, captivated by a beetle, didn't notice the way the sunlight seemed to dim. When he finally looked up, he found himself standing alone in a secluded part of the woods. Panic welled up inside him. "Mom! Dad!" he called out, his voice trembling. He saw a young boy identical to himself standing at the edge of the trees. "Ethan!" the boy whispered, his voice a raspy imitation of Ethan's own. "It's me. I need your help." Ethan, torn between fear and a strange sense of compulsion, took a step closer. "What's wrong?" he asked. The other boy, his expression unchanging, took a step towards him, his hand outstretched. The other boy, still smiling that unnerving smile, shuffled closer. "Can you help me walk, Ethan?" Ethan hesitated, knowing something wasn't right. "Okay," Ethan agreed, cautiously. The other boy leaned heavily against him, his touch oddly cold and damp. "This way," he mumbled, directing Ethan deeper into the woods. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Ethan's unease grew with each step. Back on the main trail, Michael and Sarah had noticed their son's absence. "Ethan, where are you?" Michael called out. Sarah felt a prickle of unease. "He was just here a moment ago," she said. They retraced their steps, calling out Ethan's name. Emily, her book forgotten, trailed behind her parents, her eyes wide with worry. The playful banter that had filled their hike earlier had been replaced by a heavy silence. Michael tried to reassure Sarah, but his words lacked conviction. The other boy had led Ethan to a shadowy clearing. In the center stood a massive ancient tree, its branches twisted and gnarled. Almost there, the other boy gasped. Ethan tried to pull away, but the other boy held him fast. "What are we doing here?" Ethan asked. The other boy turned to him, and for the first time, Ethan saw him clearly. His eyes glowed with a faint, eerie light. "Don't you want to help me, Ethan?" the boy whispered. Ethan stumbled back, understanding now. This wasn't his brother, not really. Time seemed to stretch as the Thompson family frantically searched for their son. They had alerted the park rangers, their voices high with panic. A search party was quickly assembled, their calls of Ethan echoing through the trees. Sarah clung to Michael, her tears a mixture of fear and guilt. The sun was beginning its final descent, casting long, menacing shadows across the forest floor. As dusk settled over the forest, casting long, eerie shadows, one of the rangers stumbled upon a glimmer of hope. A piece of fabric snagged on a thorny branch fluttered slightly in the breeze. He bent down, his heart pounding in his chest, and carefully untangled it. It was a piece of cloth, muddy and torn, but unmistakably from the shirt Ethan had been wearing. He immediately radioed his discovery to the others, his voice tight with urgency. The search party converged on his location, their flashlights cutting through the growing darkness, their faces a mixture of hope and apprehension. They followed the trail of broken branches and disturbed undergrowth, their senses on high alert, their every instinct screaming at them to hurry. The trail led them deeper into the woods, away from the familiar paths, towards a part of the park that even the most experienced rangers rarely ventured into. As they approached a clearing, bathed in the eerie glow of the rising moon, they heard a sound that sent chills down their spines. A child's scream, high-pitched and filled with terror, echoed through the trees. It was Ethan's voice. The ranger's heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging him forward. Ethan's scream, echoing through the stillness of the woods, was a lifeline in a sea of despair. He sprinted towards the sound, his flashlight cutting a swathe through the darkness, his boots pounding a frantic rhythm on the forest floor. Behind him, the rest of the search party followed, their own flashlights bobbing like fireflies in the night. The air crackled with urgency, every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig amplified by the adrenaline coursing through their veins. They burst into the clearing, their flashlights converging on the source of the scream, the ancient, gnarled tree that dominated the space. Its branches, twisted and contorted like the limbs of some ancient slumbering beast, seemed to reach out towards them, their shadows writhing menacingly in the moonlight. "Ethan!" Michael's voice, hoarse with fear and desperation, tore through the night. He pushed through the undergrowth, his eyes scanning every inch of the clearing, searching for any sign of his son. Sarah was right behind him, her own face pale and drawn, her hand clutching tightly to Michael's arm as if drawing strength from his presence. "Over here!" The ranger's voice, sharp and urgent, cut through their panic. He was standing at the base of the ancient tree, his flashlight beam directed at a spot just above eye level. There's something unnatural about this tree. The group surged forward, their hearts pounding a frantic tattoo against their ribs. As they drew closer, they saw what the ranger had spotted, a hidden opening in the trunk of the ancient tree. It wasn't a natural opening. The edges were too smooth, too regular. Faint scratch marks around the edges hinted at a struggle. "Ethan?" Sarah's voice was a choked whisper. "Stand back," one of the rangers said, his voice tight with urgency. He unholstered a small hand axe and began to widen the opening. The sound of the axe biting into the wood echoed through the clearing. The scent, cloying and unnatural, sent a shiver down Michael's spine. A final blow from the axe and the last of the wood gave way. The ranger peered into the opening, his flashlight beam illuminating a hollow chamber within the tree. It was larger than they expected, big enough to hold a small child, maybe even two. "Ethan?" Michael called out again, his voice echoing strangely within the confined space. He held his breath, listening for any sign of movement, any indication that his son was alive and well. The only response was a soft, rustling sound like the wind whispering through dry leaves. But there was no wind in the clearing. The air hung heavy and still, thick with anticipation and a growing sense of dread. "We need to get him out of there," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady. She reached for the opening, but Michael gently pulled her back. "It's too dangerous," he said, his voice tight with concern. "We don't know what's in there with him." He turned to the rangers. "We need ropes," he said, his voice firm, authoritative, "and something to pry this opening wider." The rangers sprang into action, their movements precise and efficient. Within minutes they had secured ropes around the base of the tree and were working to pry the opening wider, creating a space large enough for someone to climb inside. One of the rangers, a sturdy woman with years of experience under her belt, volunteered to go in first. She checked her equipment, her face grim but determined, and then, with a deep breath, began to descend into the hollow of the tree, her flashlight beam darting around the darkness, searching for any sign of danger. The air within the tree was thick and stagnant, heavy with the scent of decay, and something else, something faintly metallic, like blood. The ranger fought back a wave of nausea, reminding herself that Ethan needed her, that she couldn't afford to panic. She lowered herself slowly, her boots finding purchase on the damp, spongy wood. The space was cramped, the walls closing in on her, and she could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat that echoed through the silence. And then she saw him. Ethan was slumped against the far wall of the chamber, his eyes closed, his chest rising and falling in a shallow, rhythmic pattern. He was alive. Relief washed over her, so swift and powerful it almost brought her to her knees. But something wasn't right. Ethan was bound, his wrists and ankles wrapped tightly with strange vine-like growths that pulsed with an eerie, internal light. The growths were a sickly green, almost translucent, and she could see the dark, viscous fluid pulsing beneath their surface. And then she saw the creature. It was huddled in the corner, a grotesque parody of a human child, its form flickering and unstable, as if struggling to maintain its shape. Its eyes, wide and luminous, stared at her with a mixture of fear and defiance. The ranger drew her sidearm, her finger tightening on the trigger. "Get away from him!" she said, her voice firm, unwavering. The creature flinched back, its form rippling like water disturbed by a stone. "Ethan!" it rasped, its voice a grotesque imitation of a child's. "Help me." The ranger ignored it, focusing on the boy. She could see now that the vine-like growths were draining the life out of him, their sickly green glow intensifying as they fed. She sheathed her weapon and drew her knife, a heavy combat blade that had served her well in countless tight spots. She moved carefully, her movements swift and precise, cutting away the growths that bound Ethan, all the while keeping a wary eye on the creature in the corner. The growths resisted her, their surface surprisingly tough, but she persevered, her determination fueled by a mother's fierce love for her own children. Finally, with a sharp twist of the blade, she severed the last of the growths. Ethan slumped forward, his body limp, his breathing shallow. The ranger caught him before he could fall, cradling his small body in her arms. They got Ethan out of the tree, his limp body passed carefully from one pair of strong arms to another. He was weak, dehydrated but alive. Sarah wouldn't let go of him until she felt the warmth of his skin, heard the faint beat of his heart. Back at the campsite, Ethan began to stir, confused and disoriented. He spoke of a boy who lured him away, a strange tree, and feeling trapped. The rangers listened, their faces grim, knowing the legends whispered around campfires. They had seen the mimic, felt its power, its desperation. Ethan would recover, but the memory of that night would linger, a shadow in his mind. Ethan slept, finally safe in his own bed, but his sleep was troubled. Images flickered behind his eyelids, the dense, oppressive woods, the doppelganger with his own face, the suffocating hollow of the ancient tree. Sarah and Michael kept vigil by his side, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. Even as dawn painted the sky outside with hues of hope, a chill lingered in the air. The rangers, their faces grim, packed up their gear. They had shared what they knew of the mimics, the ancient curse, the shaman's desperate attempt to protect the land. Their words, once dismissed as campfire tales, now carried the weight of chilling reality. The Thompson family listened, their faces a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. As the ambulance pulled away, siren wailing a mournful farewell, a heavy silence descended upon the campsite. The other campers, their faces pale and drawn, began to dismantle their tents. their movements hurried, their laughter silenced. The carefree joy of their vacation had evaporated, replaced by a chilling awareness of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their idyllic surroundings. The whispers of the forest, once a source of tranquility, now seemed to carry a note of warning, a reminder that some secrets are best left buried, some places best left unexplored. The drive home was a somber affair. Ethan, pale and quiet, kept mostly to himself, his eyes fixed on the passing scenery, as if searching for something he couldn't quite grasp. Sarah and Michael exchanged worried glances, their minds replaying the events of the past few days in a continuous, agonizing loop. Life went on, as it always does. Ethan returned to school, Sarah to her job, Michael to his busy city life. They tried to put the experience behind them, to focus on the present, on the normalcy of their everyday routines, but the memories lingered like shadows cast by a dying fire. Ethan's nightmares continued, though they gradually became less frequent, less vivid. Sarah found herself flinching at shadows, her heart skipping a beat every time Ethan wandered out of sight, even for a moment. Michael buried himself in his work, seeking solace in the tangible world of spreadsheets and deadlines. Yet even in the heart of the bustling city, the memory of the ancient tree, of the creature that had mimicked his son, sent shivers down his spine. The unseen scars ran deep, a constant reminder of the fragility of their lives, of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of their carefully constructed reality. The national park remained, a place of breathtaking beauty and untouched wilderness. Visitors continued to flock to its trails and campsites, seeking solace in its embrace. But for those who knew the truth, who had glimpsed the darkness that lurked beneath its idyllic facade, the park held a different kind of allure. It was a place of secrets, of whispers carried on the wind, of ancient magic and enduring power. The shaman's curse remained, a silent guardian, a reminder that some forces are beyond human comprehension, some boundaries best left uncrossed. The mimics, trapped within their verdant prison, continued to watch, to wait for the opportunity to escape their confines. They were patient, their lifespans beyond human measure. They could afford to wait. The forest held its breath, its secrets safe for now. But the curse lingered, a silent echo in the stillness of the woods. A reminder that some stories never truly end, they merely fade into legend, waiting to be reawakened by the footsteps of the unwary. The next time you find yourself wandering through the wilderness, remember the tale of the mimics. Remember that even in the most beautiful of places, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface, waiting for its chance to claim another soul. Don't forget to like and subscribe and come back for more tales from Not Boom Creek. Be safe out there. Wouldn't want you to end up like Ethan or worse. See you next time.